Before we dive into today's podcast, just wanted to give you a gentle reminder that you only have a few days left to fill out your application for the Mom is in Control Mastery Program. We will be closing applications on Sunday, June 2nd at midnight Eastern Standard Time. If you want to find out more information about the program, head on over to momisincontrol.com. We also had an information session on Thursday on my Facebook fan page. You can check that out at momisincontrol.com/FB.
Hi everyone, welcome to Radiant Mom. I'm Deanne Brett, and today we are here with Heather Chauhan. Heather is the creator of the Mom is in Control podcast, where she tells it like it is, and she's really vulnerable about womanhood, parenting 3 boys, living through stage 4 cancer, navigating marriage, and creating business success without burning out. Heather, I'm so grateful to have this time with you. Welcome.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, Deanne.
Yeah. Okay. My first question is, you're balancing business success without burning out and you're podcasting every day in 2019. How is that working out?
So just like me showing up to this call, not physically prepared, I was like, crap, I thought I still had a little bit of time. And I think the truth is you just have to show up as you are. So like I said to you, I'm like, oh, well, I'm not on par. My face isn't perfect or my hair's not perfect. And I think so many women, it's been ingrained in us that everything needs to be perfect in order to take action. And the podcast is really interesting because I've been podcasting for about 4 years, 3-ish plus years, and, doing a podcast a day. But what I realized was it was easy to be like, oh, what do I put out? What do I put out? What do I want to say? And by doing a podcast a day, it forces me to speak my truth without caring what other people think. And I've even said that on the show, but it's like, I have to hit submit and create content and put it out into the world, regardless of how it's going to land with other people. The feedback has been interesting because 9 out of 10 times, the feedback I receive is great. It's phenomenal. And then you'll get that odd person that will say, this didn't land with me, or they want to debate me, or whatever it is. And the truth is, I think we have to speak our truth from what the truth is inside of us, and it will land with the other person as it's supposed to land. And the more that I try to manipulate who I am in the world, the more I'm out of alignment and I'm not being my true self. But when I'm speaking my truth and hitting submit, then I attract the people who are in alignment with where I'm at in my life. And that's what makes everything work and click.
I love that, because what you said from the very beginning is, I just show up as I am. And I think, what could be truer of parenting, right? You just show up every day. Some days it's not a great day for you or for anyone in the family. And other days it's beautiful. And some days it's minute by minute, one and then the other. But it's just showing up every day with doing the best with what you've got.
Yeah, it feels really messy to do it that way. I tried to do it the other way and I got really, really sick. I was angry. I was miserable, resentful, which apparently is normal. And I remember feeling like, not this. There was a poem that I read by Elizabeth Gilbert one time, and it was like titled Not This. And it just, the whole beauty of it. I'm sure you could Google Elizabeth Gilbert and Not This. And I'm like, yes, yes, yes. But I was asking myself, why am I the only one being like, is everybody okay with this? Are you okay with status quo? Are you okay feeling like you're never enough? You're never doing enough. You're chronically overwhelmed, exhausted. You feel this disconnect in your relationships. You're yelling and screaming. And I just stopped asking myself. And to be honest, on the other side of it was to be myself. But to be yourself is to be vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable, you're open to that judgment that not everyone is willing to take.
And so how do you take it?
Some days I cry and some days I smile. But what I have noticed is, okay, so my boys are 14, 9, and 6 at the time of this recording. I hate when they have birthdays. I'm like, dang it, you screwed up my flow. And every day is a new adventure, but I have to ask myself, why am I doing this work? Like, why do I want to become a better version of myself today more than I was yesterday? And it's for them. I always say you have to become the person you most desire your children to be. And if you are chronically trying to become a better version of you or a different version of you for all the wrong reasons, that is going to be a rat race. And so when I get that feedback and judgment, to be honest with you, I see it as a reflection now of that person's inner turmoil and not a reflection on me. Because I could literally walk by and have judgments of people chronically, but I don't anymore. I see people, I accept them for who they're at or where they're at. If it's not my thing, I'm like, that's fine. But it's also allowed me to see and accept my children for who they are and where they are at in their life. And I'm like, hey, that's your jam. That's not my jam. That's okay. You are you. I am me. Rather than trying to control everybody around us. And so that's the foundation of Mom is in Control, because I found myself and other women we were trying to control our external environment, trying to control our children's behavior, trying to control the way we look, trying to control our environments and manipulate everybody emotionally or physically around us. And it's because if you are trying to control the outside, typically it's because you feel out of control emotionally. So once I started looking inside and asking myself, what do I feel like I don't have control over? And then asking myself, do I really not have control over that? Or am I just too afraid to step into that part of me? And so the more I step into that part of me, the more I realize, wow, I actually don't care if there's a few dishes in the sink, or I'll get to it later. Oh yeah, I can be present with my children and not chronically, flipping through my phone or being like, go to bed, go to bed. That's where you start to create the space in yourself that everyone thinks they can get to from the outside.
I remember a time in my own life where I thought, I just want a clean and organized house. If the house could be under control, everything would be fine. And that's also the time I realized I needed to learn to meditate, because it was my internal self that was just like, can't stand another minute. But I was like, you have 2 children under the age of 3, a full-time job, a partner. Like, there's a lot of moving parts here. I think I can let go of this clean and organized house bit. And that was a turning point for me of being like, okay, I'm trying to make all the externals okay, so I feel okay. Let's instead put the effort on feeling okay, and then the externals can fall where they may.
Yeah, and there's, of course, there's no perfection here, but there was too many things that I was trying to control of, like, why am I the only one who has to clean the house? Like, why can't, we hire additional support if we can financially afford it, cut down on this and create space for that, if that's a priority. Also, if you have teenagers, like, unless your children are like newbie and in diapers and incapable of picking up after themselves, I think this day and age with parenting, we're doing way too much for our children. Like my 14-year-old could do his own laundry. Actually, he does do his own laundry. He can make his own bed. He can clean his room. There's lots of things our children can help us do. Yes, they're going to have resistance. Yes, they're going to bitch about it. But guess what? If we actually look at how much is on our plate instead of complaining, this is so heavy, this is so heavy. Awesome. But who actually put that on your plate? Did you say yes to it? And if you're finding yourself overwhelmed, it's like having a messy house. Like, you need to declutter your mind. You need to declutter your to-do list. And there's very many practical ways to do that, but you have to kind of call yourself out on your own shit first.
I want to tap in a little bit to some of the things that were moments that shook you up living through stage 4 cancer. I can just imagine all of the moments that you had of losing control in that situation, or really checking in with what was within your control. Tell us a little bit about some of those aha moments through that journey.
Okay. I'm like, oh man, too many aha moments. I'm in the process of like completing my book proposal. So I've been like knee deep in this stuff. I think one was when okay, so getting diagnosed is one thing because you can't control that, right? It's, you're sick, and I'm like, oh crap, this is bad. And to be honest, I'm the ambitious go-getter. Like, I'm driven, and I attract a lot of women that are driven like that. And it was the only thing that was going to slow me down. And one of my first thoughts was, oh, it's probably just stage 1. I'm good. Like, it won't knock me down that much. And they're like, Heather, it's stage 4. And I'm like, oh, there's no stage 5. Like, this is serious. This is serious. So the one thing that really bothered me was I did not want to do traditional, like chemo. So I was living this, I wouldn't say holistic lifestyle. I was like interested in it, but I didn't know a lot about it. And I was terrified to do it because everyone's telling me it's poison, you're putting poison in your body. And the first thing I had to do was surrender that these people are educated, and it doesn't matter how many documentaries I'm going to watch on why all these things are bad for me. There's a lot of power in belief as well. And I had to believe that as I was watching that chemo literally dripping into my arm, that this was healing me. And I said that. And I remember just recently I was watching the Heal documentary.
Yeah, I just watched it too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, good. So I'm not a crazy lunatic. There is power in belief, right? Like, this is healing. This is healing. This is healing. So that was a big one. Another one that shook me up was, I remember having a moment of like being terrified of death, right? Like, I'm going to leave my children, and I was so afraid to cry. Like, you have those breakdown moments of like, you don't want anyone to hear you. And it was probably at like 3 a.m. in the morning, and I was probably in the middle of treatment, because I had really aggressive rounds of chemo, and I'd be in the hospital for a few weeks at a time. And then I would come home for like 3 or 4 days. So in those 3 or 4 days, I'm trying to put on a show for my kids. But at the same time, showing them that I'm vulnerable, showing them that I'm human. But I was having like a nervous breakdown, and I was so paralyzed in fear. So I went in the bathroom, and I'm in fetal position, crying, but trying not to cry. So it's like my body's crying, but I'm like, shh, don't make noise. Don't make noise. And I remember hearing this little voice, and it literally, I want to cry just thinking about it. I'm like, I'm going to die. I'm so scared to die. I don't want to leave my kids. And then this little voice was like, but you're not dead yet. Like, you're not dead yet, Heather. So learn how to live. And I realized that I wasn't afraid of dying. I didn't know how to feel alive. I didn't know how to work and take care of my children and like nurture my soul all at the same time. So it was after that moment where I'm like, okay, what does it mean to feel alive? Well, I'm pretty close to feeling dead right now. So what can I do like today in this moment to feel more alive? And it would be little things like, I would laugh with my kids, even if I had no energy. I'm like, come cuddle with me in bed, and we're going to watch a funny movie, or let's play a game of cards, or let's just talk. What does it mean to feel alive? And then when I would gain a little bit of strength, and sometimes I would push myself too much because that's just my mindset. I remember one time I was getting my strength back, and one of my kids had a doctor's appointment. My mother-in-law's like, I'll bring them. I'm like, no, I'm going to bring them. I'm driving. I'm puking into a bucket as I'm going to the doctor. And I have no hair. I refused to wear a wig because it was itchy. And the doctor had no idea this happened to me, the pediatrician. She opens the door. I'm like, they're here for their checkup. And she's like, Heather, what happened to you? I'm like, I finished chemo. I'm good. And she's like, please go home. Like, you do not need to be here. And in hindsight, I laugh hysterically at myself of like, why was I so determined to do it all, to be it all? But I had to ask myself, like, what do I want to do today? And sometimes I was craving independence because everybody was dictating my life. So I seen it as little cries for help. But every day I had to shift, I had to push. And even something as like making a goal to get out of bed every day, go for a walk, which seems simple, but yet there was so much resistance. I had to choose to live every single day. And now, 5 years later, the translation is, okay, guys, we're going to go on this crazy adventure, or, we're skipping school today, or we're like just doing things outside of the box, because why? Our soul is craving it. And that's the whole point of life. And to me, that's the whole point of parenting.
I know when you say our soul is craving it, that sounds wonderful. And then there's all the but. How do we start to walk through all of those buts and trust that that is what we need to attend to? Our soul's craving.
Yeah. And if I would have heard that a long time ago, I would have been like, that's just some marketing BS. But it's true. I always say, like, what is that part of you that's always wanting more? Like, sometimes we can't describe it, but why aren't we listening to it? Oh, must be nice. Oh, this. Oh, I wish I could do that. I stopped listening to those stories in my head, and I started listening to the things that I knew made me feel good. I always say, have self-experiments with yourself. And I had to just experiment. Like, while I'm changing my food, I had to experiment. While I was exercising, I had to experiment. What felt good? What didn't feel good? And as I started doing these things, I'm like, oh my God, are you telling me that if I put myself on the calendar first, I actually have more energy for my family. I have more space for my business. I can make more money. I have more time. And it blows my mind that I have decided to kind of live counterintuitively. And that's what I'm teaching women now is, how do you want to feel? Awesome. What specific actions do you need to take to feel that way? Great. Put those things on your calendar. Follow through with that. Every ounce of your being is going to say, not this, not this, not this. Like, I can't do this. I don't have time for it. I literally am like, experiment with yourself, run towards the resistance. And for me, evidence is ROI. You're seeing some energy come back. You're seeing a deeper connection with your child. You're feeling more alive. You're feeling more in alignment. You're happier. You're less judgmental. I'm like, why are we doing the research and waiting for the science to come out and the data? It's like, how does that feel in your life? We are so disconnected from ourselves. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I'm a little bit of a rebel, and I'm just like, I'm done waiting for everyone else tell me what I need to do in my life to get to where I want to be, because I literally have all the answers I need if I sit with pen and paper and ask myself, what do I want? And I do that. And now my whole family does that. I'm like, honey, what do you want? Tell me what you want. Writes it down. Kids, what do you want for dinner? What do you want for this? What do you want for that? Great. Let's make it happen. Awesome. Everyone's happy. Why? Because they're being heard and we're actually following through.
Yeah, that is so powerful. And I love what you said about the experiment, because I talked about that too. In my own life, I do that. And because that was the only way I was going to get through when I was stuck in this moment of like, I just need a clean and organized house. I was like, and I know that's not what I need. That would be nice, but I know that's not really what I need at the core of me. And then
I just need a bag of chips.
Yeah, right. I just need, that ice cream or whatever it is. And realizing, okay, what do I really need? And asking that question. And bless his heart, it was my husband who started asking me that question, because he was like tearing his hair out, like, what do you want? I know it's not about the house. And really, I love what you said about do it and see how it feels. That's the data you need. We don't need scientists to tell us. That's the data you need, is try it and see how it feels. And modeling that for kids is so powerful, because here's kind of the big picture of why I do this work. I worked for over 10 years with high school students, and every year they're reporting more and more anxiety and depression and overwhelm. And part of it is they're looking at the adult world and they're like, that looks like misery. I do not want to go there. And when I could listen to my students and hear what they were saying and what they were believing, it was incredible, the perspective that some of them had on life of like, no, why would I want to be an adult? That looks horrible. And others some of them were like excited. I can make a difference. Like I have gifts and skills to share in the world. And the question that makes me wonder is, what makes the difference between kids who have that compelling, I could do something, and it's that they felt empowered. And I love what you just described. My kids have been heard. They know that their wanting is actually compelling and going to lead them somewhere.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I started my business, my why was to make sure that my children never felt the way that I did as a teen. And looking back now, raising a teen, actually, I just podcasted about this. I think it was episode 366. And I said, tell me why I'm different right now in this moment than your friends, like your friends' parents. And he wrote out a list of 8 things. And some of it was, you encourage me to go for my passion. But then another one was like, you don't let my brain rot with video games or too much screen time, like things that he has resistance to, things that he is constantly rebelling against. And I just look at parenting as a way to empower our children to become who they are, encourage them. And we don't realize, but I always tell people, think of one person in your life that the second you enter the room, you're just lit up and inspired by them. And you feel better when you leave their presence. And think about the person that you like, you're in connection with this person. All of a sudden you feel like crap when you walk away. Like you literally are like, I have to take a shower after spending time with that person because I feel like they just puked all over me and I feel very negative and gross right now. And ask yourself, do you feel like the positive influence or the negative influence? And if you are thinking, I don't feel really good, like I'm constantly a Debbie Downer, I don't know how to turn the ship around, understand that is how your children feel in your presence. And growing up, my mother is like a beautiful soul and I love her to pieces. And I personally feel like parenting is like you're just passing the baton. It's like, thank you for all the baggage. It is my job to let go of what's not serving me, but utilize what is. And, there's the light and there's the dark. And I took the darkness that I received in my parenting and utilized it to fuel me to become a better person. But sometimes people have the inability to understand their emotions or inability to find joy in their life. And I think it's a generational thing too. Like if we look at our parents or how our parents were parented, like there's a lot of trauma in history. We know this, right? And there's always going to be something, but I just believe we want to make a difference in the world. We literally have to start with ourselves because we do not understand the ripple effect that we make out in the world.
I love that. I was talking to someone earlier this week and she said, I guess they're saying the people who do the statistics say you have a ripple effect of about 1,000 people that you can really influence. And I think that is changing radically with the kind of technology we have now to connect. So the impact can be so incredible. But what it really comes down to is those one-on-one interactions, the presence that you are in the moment.
Yeah. And I don't think, like, I even have this in my own head. I don't matter. Like this little story will come up. I've had it since I was younger, which is why when I was a teenager, I felt like I didn't have a purpose. And now my whole life is purpose driven. But I didn't realize that that's just the negativity bias of the brain. I also didn't understand that I have gifts. I'm sensitive. I'm an introvert. I'm intuitive, empathetic, whatever you want to, label people as. And children are these things too. So if your child is struggling, you are extremely challenged with your child, your teen, whoever, realize that they have gifts. If they have anxiety, most likely they are a highly sensitive person and they can feel other people's energies. So they're just carrying other people's crap. And every day I'm like, this isn't going to make a difference. This isn't going to make a difference. And then I'll get messages from someone saying, I've been listening to your podcast for a month and I've actually gotten more out of a month than 6 years of therapy, or like you gave me the ass kicking that I needed to do XYZ. And And that's a message that someone sent out to me. But what about those people you never hear from? What about that impact you can make from just smiling at someone who's having a bad day, or saying thank you to someone? You have no idea what that impact makes to a complete stranger. Imagine what that energy would do if you put it towards your child and yourself, right? There's this co-creation. I say parenting is personal growth on steroids, but part of this is we're walking this path with our children. I have to figure out who I am, mother myself, but also I'm like, oh, I learned this tool or strategy. Try it. Like, does this work for you? But if I see my child freaking out because of their anger or anxiety, and I've never learned how to manage my own, how the heck am I going to be like, oh, try this. Oh, you don't want to try it? Okay, cool. You'll figure it out. Like, you might pick it up later or whatever, but until you do, I'm going to manage my anger and anxiety so that hoping my energy will ripple off onto you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like especially parenting teenagers is personal development on steroids, because there's all those layers of trusting, letting go, and hoping that, you know, the impact that you've had will make a difference and your kids will make the right choices for themselves when they're not right there with you. I was listening to one of your podcasts and you were like, honestly, when my kid goes out, I say a prayer. And I remember the moment when our son was just old enough to go to the park across the street. I came into the bedroom and my husband is like peeking out the blinds. I was like, what's going on? He's like, I let Josh go to the park by himself. And we were both like waiting, praying, hoping, knowing you have to let them try these things, but it is so hard. But that's the journey. How is it now that your oldest is 14 in that letting go process?
I was going to joke around and be like, I just let him go to the park by himself. But to be honest, sometimes he's like, Mom, people do this, you know. And like, I think I even look at how, not so much how I parent him just because he's the oldest, but I'm like, what did I do at his age? I'm like, oh my gosh, I had so much more freedom, but the culture was different. Like, it was very different. And the trusting process, I think for me, it's being vulnerable. Like, I used to hate when people would say, no, you can't do that. I would always ask, why? Like, I don't care if you won't let me do something, but please explain why. So to me, it's speaking my truth with him. And I will tell him, like, I'm really scared. Like, what if something happens? And I will talk out my fear with him, and he'll justify it, or he'll try to manipulate me into getting him to do something. And then we have to come to a conclusion. But I think communication is really, really important, or coming up with a plan, you know, like, okay, you're going to go here. What time are you going to be home? Are you going to, you know, text me? Who are you going to be with? And then he's like, Mom, you're so annoying. But then I'll just make up jokes and random comments of like, okay, so this scenario happens. What do you do? But I do trust him. I do, at my core, I do trust him, but it definitely rocks you to your core. But I have to, it's not about me, you know, like, there's so many quotes out there, especially in the woo-woo spiritual space about parenting, that our children are not ours. They come through us, but they, you know, they're not mini me's. And I'm paraphrasing here, but we really have to trust that this is like, what do they say? A spiritual being having a human experience. And I cannot control that child because I'm afraid, because I am terrified. And I realize that from a young age, when my kids were a young age, that they're here to teach me more about myself than I'm giving myself credit for. So when people think I'm going to do all the personal development work and then I'm going to have children, good. Oh God.
They're going to get exactly the teachers that they need.
Exactly. You think you have everything sealed and all good, and then you will be gifted that child that will rock you to your core. And yet it is both terrifying and beautiful and like, oh my gosh, all at once, tied in a bow. But if you choose to pick the brave, courageous path, or if you choose fear and anxiety and overwhelm and depletion and lack, you will suffer. But if you choose to jump outside of that and say, you know what, I feel really guilty for spending an additional 30 minutes when I should be at home with the kids to go to the gym or to do something for myself, you will see your energy shift and you will see the impact you will make.
Absolutely. You know, it was funny the other day, I was telling my daughter that I was starting to do all of these interviews and that it was called Radiant Mom. And she's like, oh, because you are a radiant mom. And I was like, that's sweet. She's not often so sweet about things. And she's like, and dad's a radiant dad too. I was like, well, what makes him radiant? Because I like him. And I was like, I love it. There's no criteria. There's no qualities. It's just like, I give him the stamp of approval. Done. It's good. And it's those little moments that I think sometimes I overcomplicate things. And just recognizing it's in those simple moments, like she's saying, like, no, things are good. I'm good. Me and dad, we're solid. It's good. That's all we need in a day to know, okay, now we can take another step together. And I love what you've described in your family of just being vulnerable with your kids. Like, I'm really worried about this. And they're like, Mom, I've got it handled. I can handle that with you, because it's so much a sharing of the emotions. So I think sometimes as parents, we want to say, no, I have to handle my own emotional world and not let the kids see that there even is an emotional world. And I think you've described a really beautiful example of how you can share in that without overloading your kids with, caretaking your emotions. You're doing that work, but showing them what it looks like.
Yeah, there's no expectation that they need to be my therapist or my parent. I'm just physically sharing, right? Sharing my experience, just like I would for them. Many times in my kids' life, be like, you did this to me, you did that. And I'm big on emotional responsibility and emotional intelligence and teaching our kids, you're angry. Like, that's your anger. Just because I said, sorry, you can't have a bowl of candy before dinner, doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. And sure, I give you the bowl of candy before dinner. Now you have a belly ache. How is that my responsibility? And so at a young age, they're not going to realize this. The brain is developing. But if I chronically show up as that teacher, and I always say, like, we're all saving for their college and university, but regardless, they're going to end up in therapy. Like, this is part of the human experience. And I was so terrified of that. Like, my kids are going to be screwed up. Like, I'm so screwed up. I'm like, no, we are all, I hate to say it, but it all stems back, and not even, everyone's got mommy and daddy issues, but the mom, culturally, we get crapped on. Not only do we have high expectations for women in society, but for whatever reason, the brain wants to blame the mom for everything, right? Like, attachment parenting and how you felt. If you go down the rabbit hole of this stuff, it's like your belief systems can like go to the uterus and all of these crazy things. And I'm like, hey, I love my children. That should be enough. So we have to stop judging ourselves. We have to stop judging others. And some days I'm just like, I don't know what else to say or do for them. And we kind of have this thing in our house where I'll say, I love you. Like, we'll end the sentence, especially when we're like in a heated discussion, we'll just end the sentence with, I love you. And especially the oldest, he'll be in a bad mood and I'll be like triggered by that. And I don't really yell anymore, but I just end it with, I love you. I love you. And then he'll come back, 10 minutes later and be like, I love you. And it's like, I still love and respect you, even though we disagree. And that's okay. And I think that's healthy.
Absolutely. And so powerful. I think you're right. We all could trace back, well, I interpreted this thing with my parents to mean this thing about me. And it's that moment where we can recognize that. And it's no longer about the parents. It's about, okay, I know that now. What freedom does that open up for me? What can I do with that now that I have that understanding? And as a mom, that helps me go through every day knowing I'm going to make mistakes. There's going to be times down the future where my kids are like, why was she that way to me? And understanding that I can't get outside of that that's part of the experience.
Yeah. A big part of the whole cancer journey for me, like I went through a phase where I blamed myself for screwing up my kids because I got sick. And I'm like, this is going to be imprinted in their brain. And, now they're going to have this experience. And I thought, or it's going to show them that life is precious and they're going to appreciate it more and they're going to have more compassion and empathy. And I see it in my children. And it's the way that I choose to look at things too. If it's ridden in fear, I'm going to be passing that fear on to them. Or if it's like, but what's the gift in this? Like whatever my attitude is really sets the tone for their attitude.
Absolutely. Heather, I feel like I could chat with you for hours on end, and I'm grateful that you have a podcast so I can still listen in on your thoughts and insights into this crazy, messy journey of parenting. But I am so grateful that you were able to join us on Radiant Mom to be here and share really the insides and the vulnerability and the authentic experience of what it's like for you from where your vantage point in the world. So thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much. Non-makeup, messy hair, and all.
We love you just the same because this is you. And that's actually such a beautiful piece of this because it's your radiance, because it's your authenticity and it's you. Doesn't matter what your hair looks like, how much makeup you have on, you shared yourself with us. And that is such a beautiful example for everyone who's watching and listening, and especially for our kids. They take us as we are because that's the best that we've got. So that was a great example for us.
Thank you, Deanne.
And thank you to everyone who's watching and listening for hanging in here. And I just know that there is an aha moment that you've had through this interview that hopefully has cracked something open inside of you so you can find the best way for you to live. And if it's one thing, let it be asking yourself that question. What do you want? What do you want? Heather has gifted us with a powerful question. So until next time, everyone, be well.
I left the corporate world while I was with Heather, and I started a marketing consulting business, and I actually just started a coaching business helping out parents who are stuck and don't know who they are anymore, and helping them discover who they are. Before I met Heather, I was struggling with my parenting, and I really thought it was just my parenting that was the problem, but it was in all aspects of life, from parenting to career to relationships to home and even money. And when I found Heather, her podcast, it just hit home. Like there was a few podcast episodes that just triggered me to go ahead and apply. And slowly things started to unravel and just grow, and I started seeing a little bit of light here and a little bit light there, and everything just started to blossom and become lighter, and I found the old cat again. Yeah, so the transformation is crazy, and I could talk about it for probably hours, but the biggest thing is like during the course and working with her, the magic that happened was I stopped yelling at my kids. I started taking care of myself. I started valuing the relationships that I had with my husband, my coworkers, and friends more. I started seeing the positive in life instead of always looking at the glass half full. And post all this work, she just put the little bug in me that said, hey, Kat, you can actually share this, and you have a story, and you have the ability to lead. And I'm just having a fun time sharing all the learnings, and I just feel like everyone in the world needs to hear what Heather's been saying in their own way. And so to allow other grads and other people who worked with her to share the message is key. Heather, I love you. You changed my life.